The crack of a rifle shot shattered the peaceful dawn, sending a flock of startled birds into the crimson Nevada sky, as Fiona Fitzgerald ducked behind the overturned stagecoach, her heart hammering against her ribs like a wild mustang. Blood trickled down her temple where a bullet had grazed her, but she hardly noticed the pain's survival was all that mattered now. The stagecoach to Tonopah Junction that had promised a fresh start was now a splintered wreck, the driver dead, and 4 leering outlaws closing in on her and the remaining passengers. "Might as well come on out, pretty lady," called a gravelly voice. "We ain't got all day, and things'll go easier if you don't fight us." Fiona clutched the small derringer hidden in her skirts, knowing its 2 bullets would hardly be enough against the band of outlaws. At 22, she'd traveled alone from Boston to Nevada territory to take over her late uncle's mercantile store, but nothing in her sheltered Eastern upbringing had prepared her for this moment. "I said come out." The outlaw's voice hardened as he fired another shot that splintered wood inches from her face. One of the passengers, an elderly man, tried to make a break for the nearby rocks, but was cut down before he'd gone 10 paces. Fiona bit back a scream, tasting the dust of the trail and the copper of her own blood. "Last chance," the outlaw leader warned, his shadow stretching across the ground toward her hiding spot. Fiona steeled herself to face death with dignity, when suddenly the thunder of approaching hoofbeats cut through the tension. Before she could process what was happening, a volley of gunfire erupted from the ridge above, but this time, the outlaws were the targets. "Take cover." A deep, commanding voice rang out as a tall figure on horseback charged down the slope, firing with deadly precision. 2 outlaws fell immediately. The third managed to get off a wild shot before taking a bullet to the chest. The leader dove behind a boulder, returning fire as the newcomer dismounted in one fluid motion and rushed to the stagecoach. Fiona found herself looking up into the most striking pair of blue eyes she'd ever seen, set in a sun-bronzed face partially hidden by a 3-day beard. The stranger wore a worn leather vest over a faded blue shirt, with a star pinned to his chest that caught the morning light. "Stay down, madam," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle despite the urgency of the situation. "This ain't over yet," the outlaw leader bellowed with rage. "You'll die for this, Vance, I swear it." "Not today, Harkins," the man called back calmly, checking his revolver before meeting Fiona's gaze again. "Name's Adam Vance, U.S. Marshal. Seems you've had the misfortune of meeting the Harkins gang." A bullet ricocheted off the stagecoach frame above them, sending splinters raining down. Marshal Vance barely flinched, his steady presence somehow calming Fiona's terror. "I need to move to a better position," he explained, pointing to a cluster of rocks. "Can you make it over there if I provide covering fire?" Fiona nodded, gathering her torn skirts. "I can," the marshal's lips curved slightly. "On my mark then. 1, 2, 3. He rose up, firing 3 rapid shots that sent the outlaw ducking for cover, and Fiona sprinted across the open ground to the rocks. The marshal followed moments later, his tall frame folding down beside her as bullets kicked up dust where they had just been. "You're bleeding," he observed, his eyes narrowing at her temple. "Just a graze," Fiona replied, surprised at the steadiness in her own voice. "There are other passengers I saw." His expression darkened. "Harkins doesn't leave witnesses, that's why I've been tracking them for 3 months." A tense silence fell as they listened for movement. The wind whispered through the sage, carrying the scent of gunpowder and death. "He's trying to circle around," Marshal Vance whispered. "Stay here." Before Fiona could protest, he was gone, moving with the silent grace of a mountain lion. She clutched her derringer, listening to the faint sounds of boots on rocky ground. A sudden shout was followed by 2 gunshots and the thud of bodies hitting the ground. Fiona held her breath, desperately hoping the marshal had prevailed. The silence stretched until she thought she might scream from the tension. Then Adam Vance reappeared, a thin trail of blood running down his arm but otherwise intact. "It's over," he said simply. "Harkins won't trouble anyone again." Relief flooded through Fiona so powerfully that she nearly collapsed. The marshal caught her elbow, steadying her with a strength that seemed limitless. "Thank you," she managed, looking up at him. "You saved my life." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise perhaps at the sincerity in her voice. "Just doing my job, Miss Fitzgerald, Fiona Fitzgerald, Miss Fitzgerald." He tipped his hat slightly. "Welcome to Nevada territory. Not our finest reception, I'm afraid." Despite everything, Fiona found herself smiling at his dry humor. "Is it always this exciting?" "Only on Tuesdays," he replied with the ghost of a smile before turning serious again. "We need to see to the other passengers and get you to Tonopah Junction. Town's only about 4 miles from here." As Marshal Vance helped her toward his horse, Fiona realized that her life had irrevocably changed. The West was wilder and more dangerous than she had imagined, but it was also home to men like Adam Vance, whose courage and honor seemed as vast as the desert sky above them. What she couldn't know then, as they rode away from the scene of the attack, was that her path would remain entwined with the marshals, and that the journey ahead would challenge and change them both in ways neither could imagine. Tonopah Junction, Nevada came into view as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the dusty Main Street. Fiona, seated behind Marshal Vance on his sturdy chestnut gelding, felt a curious mix of relief and apprehension as they approached the town. The marshal had managed to retrieve her trunk from the wrecked stagecoach, securing it to his saddle with practiced ease. But the other passengers, a drummer selling patent medicines, and a young couple heading to California, had not survived the attack. "I'll take you straight to Doc Miller," Adam said over his shoulder, his voice carrying above the rhythmic hoofbeats. "That wound needs proper attention." "It's barely a scratch," Fiona protested, though the dried blood on her face suggested otherwise. "Wounds like that can fester in this heat if not tended to," he replied with the authority of one who had seen such things before. "Besides, Doc's wife Sarah will have a place for you to clean up and rest." As they rode down the main street, Fiona took in her new home. Tonopah Junction was bigger than she'd expected a proper town, rather than the rustic outpost she had imagined. False-fronted buildings lined both sides of the street. A general store with Jenkins Mercantile, painted in fading letters her uncle's store, she realized with a pang. A hotel called the Silver Spur, the Territorial Bank, the Inevitable Saloon, and various other establishments that comprised a frontier community. People stopped to stare as they passed, and Fiona became acutely aware of her torn dress, the blood on her face, and the intimate way she clung to the marshal's back. Whispers followed them, and she knew that by nightfall, everyone in Tonopah Junction would know of the stagecoach attack and her arrival with Adam Vance. The marshal reined his horse to a stop before a small white building with green shutters, a wooden sign proclaiming Dr. E. Miller Physician swung gently in the afternoon breeze. "Here we are," Adam said, dismounting in one fluid motion before reaching up to help her down. Fiona's legs nearly buckled when her feet touched the ground, the delayed shock of the morning's events finally catching up to her. Adam's strong hand steadied her, his touch respectful yet reassuring. "I've got you," he said quietly, and something in his tone made her look up and meet his gaze. For a moment, they stood there, connected by shared trauma and something else, something Fiona wasn't ready to name. Then the doctor's door opened, breaking the spell. Adam, didn't expect to see you back so soon, called a balding man in his 50s, wiping his hands on a cloth. His eyes widened as he took in Fiona's condition. Good Lord, what happened? Harkin's gang hit the morning stage, Adam explained, guiding Fiona toward the door. This is Miss Fitzgerald. She's the only survivor. Dr. Miller's expression softened with compassion. Come in, my dear. Sarah, he called over his shoulder. Put some water on to boil and fetch clean linens. The next hour passed in a blur as Fiona was tended to by the doctor and his kindly wife. The wound was cleaned and dressed, her torn and bloodied clothes replaced with a borrowed dress, and a cup of strong, sweet tea pressed into her hands. Through it all, Marshal Vance remained nearby, giving his report on the attack and the final demise of the notorious Harkins gang. You should be proud, Adam, Dr. Miller said as he packed away his supplies. You've rid the territory of a real menace. Adam shook his head slightly. 4 good people died today, Doc. Hard to feel proud about that. 5 would have died if not for you, Fiona said quietly, speaking for the first time since they'd entered the doctor's house. I owe you my life. Adam seemed almost embarrassed by her gratitude. Just happened to be in the right place. He turned to Dr. Miller. I need to send telegrams to the families of the deceased and report to the territorial governor. Miss Fitzgerald will need lodgings until she can sort out her affairs. My uncle's store, Fiona said, straightening her shoulders. Jenkins Mercantile. I believe there are living quarters above it. Adam and the doctor exchanged glances. Miss Fitzgerald, the doctor began gently. Old Tom Jenkins passed 6 months ago, but his store has been running under the management of his assistant, Mr. Pickering. I'm not sure what arrangements. The store is mine, Fiona said firmly. I have all the legal documents in my trunk. My uncle's lawyer in Sacramento confirmed everything before I left Boston. Adam nodded slowly. I'll escort you there and help sort things out with Pickering. The man's been running things his own way for a while now. After thanking the doctor and his wife, Fiona found herself once again following Adam Vance, this time on foot down the dusty street toward the Mercantile. Her trunk had been left at the livery stable for safekeeping, with only a small valise of essential items retrieved for immediate use. Jenkins Mercantile stood at the corner of Main Street, and what appeared to be the town's secondary thoroughfare. It was a substantial 2-story building with large display windows and a wide porch. A bell jingled as Adam pushed open the door, ushering Fiona inside. The familiar sense of coffee, tobacco, leather, and fabric brought an unexpected lump to Fiona's throat. Though she had never visited her uncle's store before, it reminded her of similar establishments back east, places that represented stability and commerce in a community. A thin man with slicked back hair and a pencil mustache looked up from the ledger he was studying behind the counter. His eyes widened at the sight of the marshal, then narrowed suspiciously as they fell on Fiona. Marshal Vance, he acknowledged with a nod. What brings you here today, and who is your companion? Something in the way he hesitated made Fiona bristle, but Adam's steady presence beside her was calming. Mr. Pickering, this is Miss Fiona Fitzgerald, Tom Jenkins' niece from Boston, Adam said formally. She's come to take possession of her inheritance. The change in Pickering's expression would have been comical under different circumstances. Shock, disbelief, and calculation all flashed across his features before settling into a tight smile. Miss Fitzgerald, what an unexpected surprise. We had no word of your arrival. I sent letters, Fiona replied, her voice stronger than she felt. 3 of them, in fact. The last one specified my arrival date on today's stage. Pickering's smile didn't waver. Mail service is terribly unreliable out here. I received no such correspondence. He gestured around the store. As you can see, I've kept your uncle's business thriving in his absence. The books are in excellent order." "I'm sure they are, Mr. Pickering," Fiona said with more confidence than she felt. "And I'll want to review them thoroughly. But first, I need to settle in. I understand there are living quarters upstairs." A flicker of something resistance perhaps crossed Pickering's face. "Well, yes, but I've been using the office up there, and the living space is quite rudimentary. Perhaps the hotel would be more suitable for a lady of your upbringing." Adam cleared his throat. "Miss Fitzgerald has had a trying day, Pickering. The stage was attacked by the Harkins gang this morning. She's the sole survivor and has lost most of her belongings. I think the least you can do is show her to her own property." Pickering blanched at the mention of the attack. "The Harkins gang? Good heavens! My deepest sympathies, Miss Fitzgerald." His tone became more solicitous. "Of course you must stay here. Let me show you upstairs immediately." As Pickering hurried to lock the cash drawer and fetch a set of keys, Adam leaned closer to Fiona. "I don't trust that man," he murmured. "Something's off." "Neither do I," Fiona whispered back, grateful for the marshal's insight. "But I need to establish myself here. I can't show weakness on my first day." Adam studied her with newfound respect. "You're tougher than you look, Miss Fitzgerald. Please call me Fiona. After what we've been through today, formality seems rather pointless." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Fiona, then, and I'm Adam." Pickering returned before Adam could say more, leading them to a door at the rear of the store that opened onto a narrow staircase. The upper floor was divided into a small office facing the street and living quarters at the back. A sitting room, bedroom, and tiny kitchen with a pump sink. The furnishings were simple but serviceable, and large windows provided ample light and a view of the mountains beyond the town. "It's dusty," Pickering apologized, looking uncomfortable. "No one's lived up here since your uncle passed." Fiona moved to the window, taking in the view while gathering her thoughts. Despite the day's trauma and the evident tension with Pickering, she felt a curious sense of rightness. This place was hers. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them. "It will do nicely," she said, turning back to the men. "Mr. Pickering, I'll need the store's ledgers and any correspondence regarding my uncle's affairs. I'll begin reviewing them tomorrow." Pickering shifted uneasily. "Of course, Miss Fitzgerald. Though I usually handle the books in the evening after closing, I'm sure you can make an exception," Adam interrupted smoothly. "Miss Fitzgerald is the owner now." The pointed reminder made Pickering flush. "Yes, of course. I'll have everything ready in the morning." He checked his pocket watch with exaggerated care. "If you'll excuse me, I should return to the customers. The afternoon stage from Carson City brings our mail delivery." After Pickering departed, Adam moved to the window beside Fiona. "He's hiding something." "Yes," Fiona agreed. "But what?" "I intend to find out." Adam's voice held a promise that sent an unexpected warmth through Fiona. "I'll have your trunk brought up from the livery. Is there anything else you need tonight?" Fiona thought of the small derringer in her valise, her only weapon. Would it be possible to have a proper firearm after today? Adam nodded gravely. "I'll bring you a shotgun. Simple to use, and the sound alone is usually enough to deter trouble." He hesitated. "I need to file my report and send those telegrams, but I can check on you later this evening." "Make sure you're settled in." "I would appreciate that," Fiona said, surprising herself with her eagerness to see him again. As Adam prepared to leave, he paused at the top of the stairs. "Lock this door behind me. Don't open it for anyone you don't know." His blue eyes held hers intently. "Tanapa Junction is mostly decent folks, but like anywhere, it has its share of trouble." After he left, Fiona locked the door as instructed, then leaned against it, suddenly overwhelmed. In a single day, she had faced death, lost everything she'd brought from Boston except what was in her trunk, arrived in a strange town, and discovered her inheritance might not be as straightforward as she'd been led to believe. Yet alongside these challenges was the unexpected presence of Adam Vance, a man who had saved her life and then continued to protect her interests. A man whose quiet strength and integrity were unlike anything she had encountered in Boston society. Fiona moved to the small bedroom and sank onto the edge of the mattress, dust motes dancing in the late afternoon sunlight streaming through the window. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now she was alive. She had a roof over her head, and she was not entirely alone in this strange new world. For the first time since the stagecoach attack, Fiona allowed herself to cry not from fear or sorrow, but from the overwhelming relief of survival and the dawning realization that her life in Tanapa Junction would be nothing like she had planned, yet possibly everything she had unknowingly needed. The next morning dawned clear and bright, sunlight streaming through the small window of Fiona's bedroom. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't place where she was. The narrow bed, the simple pine furniture, and the distant sounds of a town stirring to life were all unfamiliar. Then yesterday's events crashed back into her consciousness. The stagecoach attack, the Outlaws, Marshal Vance's timely arrival, and her unceremonious introduction to Tanapa Junction. Fiona rose stiffly, her body aching from the previous day's ordeal. The borrowed dress from Mrs. Miller hung on a peg beside a small mirror. She washed at the basin, wincing as the cold water touched the bandage on her temple, then dressed carefully, determined to present a composed appearance for her first full day as proprietress of Jenkins Mercantile. A knock at the door made her freeze. "Who is it?" she called, reaching for the shotgun Adam had brought her last evening, along with her trunk and a basket of food from Sarah Miller. "It's Adam Vance, Fiona." Relief flooded through her as she hurried to unlock the door. Adam stood there, hat in hand, looking freshly shaven but with dark circles beneath his eyes suggesting he'd had little sleep. "Good morning," he said, his gaze taking in her appearance with evident approval. "How are you feeling?" "Surprisingly well, considering," Fiona replied, setting aside the shotgun, "though I must look a fright." Adam's expression softened. "You look fine. Better than fine, actually." He cleared his throat, seeming embarrassed by his own words. "I brought coffee and some fresh bread from the hotel. Thought you might not want to face the town gossips at breakfast just yet." The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched Fiona deeply. "Thank you. Please come in." They sat at the small table in the kitchen area, the rich aroma of coffee filling the room as Adam poured 2 cups. Fiona broke the bread, still warm from the oven, and offered him half. "I've been thinking about your situation," Adam said after they had eaten in companionable silence for a few minutes. "Something doesn't add up with Pickering." "I agree," Fiona said, leaning forward. "I reviewed the few documents I brought with me from my uncle's lawyer. According to them, the store has been extremely profitable. Yet the living quarters look barely used, and I saw no evidence of substantial improvements to the property." Adam nodded. "I did some asking around last night. Pickering lives quite well for a shop manager, has a nice house on the edge of town, frequents the high-stakes poker games at the Silver Dollar Saloon, and recently purchased a new carriage." A cold feeling settled in Fiona's stomach. "You think he's been stealing from the store?" "It's possible." Adam's blue eyes were serious. "But we need proof before making accusations. The man's been here for years and has friends in town." "The ledgers," Fiona said decisively. "I need to see the actual books. If he's been skimming profits or misrepresenting the store's performance to my uncle's lawyers in Sacramento, it will show in the numbers." Adam smiled slightly. You sound like you know something about business, Miss Fitzgerald. My father was an accountant before his passing, Fiona explained. He insisted I learn bookkeeping, saying a woman should always be able to manage her own affairs. She smiled at the memory. He would be gratified to know his lessons might save his daughter from being swindled. Smart man, Adam commented. I'll stay close by today. Pickering won't like being questioned, especially by a woman. You have other duties, surely, Fiona protested, though secretly relieved at the offer. I can't monopolize the territory's marshal. Harkins was my primary assignment, Adam replied. With his gang eliminated, I have some flexibility in my duties. He hesitated. Besides, I feel responsible for your safe arrival in Tanapa Junction, given the circumstances. The clock on the wall chimed 7 times, reminding Fiona that the store would be opening soon. I should go downstairs and begin establishing myself as the new proprietor. Adam stood, settling his hat back on his head. I'll check back midday. If Pickering gives you any trouble, send word to my office. It's next to the bank. Fiona gathered her courage and made her way downstairs, where she found Pickering already opening the store. His smile tightened almost imperceptibly when he saw her. Miss Fitzgerald, I didn't expect you to be up and about so early after yesterday's ordeal. I believe in beginning as I mean to go on, Mr. Pickering, she replied with calm authority. I would like to review the store's ledgers and inventory records this morning. Pickering's smile became fixed. Of course, though perhaps it would be better to observe store operations first. Get a feel for the business before diving into the dry details. I prefer to understand the financial foundation before anything else, Fiona countered smoothly. The ledgers, please. After a moment's hesitation that confirmed her suspicions, Pickering retrieved a leather-bound ledger from beneath the counter. This is the current accounts book. The archives are in the storeroom. I'll need those as well, Fiona said, accepting the ledger. And all correspondence with my uncle's lawyers in Sacramento. Pickering's face paled slightly. That might take some time to gather. We've been quite busy and my filing system is personal. Then I suggest you begin gathering them immediately, Fiona said pleasantly but firmly. I'll be at my uncle's desk, upstairs reviewing this ledger. The morning passed in intense concentration as Fiona scrutinized the accounts. It didn't take long to spot the discrepancies. Inventory received but never recorded as sold, expenses that seemed unusually high for their stated purpose, and a pattern of cash withdrawals listed vaguely as miscellaneous store expenses. By noon, Fiona had compiled a list of questionable entries totaling over $3,000 in just the past 6 months, a substantial sum that confirmed her worst suspicions. She was so absorbed in her task that she startled when a knock sounded at the office door. "Come in," she called, expecting Pickering. Instead, Adam entered, carrying a small package. "Thought you might be hungry," he said, setting down a cloth-wrapped parcel that proved to contain thick sandwiches and slices of apple pie. "You're a godsend," Fiona said with genuine gratitude, suddenly realizing how hungry she was. "How did you know I'd forgotten about lunch?" "You strike me as someone who gets lost in her work," Adam replied, taking the seat across from her desk. His eyes fell on the open ledger and her notes. "Found something." Fiona pushed her calculations toward him. "More than something. Mr. Pickering has been systematically embezzling from the store. Conservative estimate puts the total at around $3,000 since my uncle's death, possibly more." Adam whistled softly. "That's a serious accusation, backed by serious evidence." He studied her notes. "What do you plan to do?" "Confront him, of course," Fiona said, unwrapping her sandwich. I need those missing funds returned, and then I need a new manager, someone honest who knows the business. Confronting him could be dangerous, Adam cautioned. Men like Pickering don't usually surrender their schemes easily. Fiona met his gaze steadily. That's why I hoped you might be present for the conversation. A slow smile spread across Adam's face. I was planning to suggest exactly that. They finished their lunch discussing strategy, and by the time they descended to the store floor, Fiona felt prepared for the confrontation ahead. The store was busy with midday customers, forcing them to wait until the rush subsided before approaching Pickering. "Mr. Pickering," Fiona said when the last customer had departed, "I need to speak with you privately about some discrepancies I've found in the accounts." Pickering's eyes darted between Fiona and Adam, registering the marshal's official presence. "Discrepancies?" "I'm sure there's a simple explanation for any mistakes, $3,000 worth of mistakes," Fiona interrupted, laying her notes on the counter. "These aren't errors, Mr. Pickering. This is systematic theft." Pickering's demeanor changed instantly, his obsequious manner dropping away to reveal cold anger. "You come here from the East, knowing nothing about running a frontier business, and dare to accuse me of theft. I've kept this store going since old Tom died. Without me, it would have collapsed." "That doesn't entitle you to steal from his estate," Adam said quietly, his hand resting casually near his holster. "Miss Fitzgerald has the evidence right here, enough to send you to territorial prison." Fear flickered across Pickering's face. "You wouldn't." "I would," Fiona said firmly. "Unless you return the stolen funds and resign your position immediately." A tense silence filled the store. For a moment, Fiona thought Pickering might refuse or even become violent, but then his shoulders sagged in defeat. "I have about $2,000 I can return," he said sullenly. "The rest is gone lost in investments and gambling." $2,000 will do for now," Adam said. "You'll sign a promissory note for the remainder to be paid in monthly installments." By late afternoon, the confrontation was resolved. Pickering had surrendered the money he had available, signed the necessary documents, and departed with barely concealed fury, leaving Fiona the undisputed owner of Jenkins Mercantile and without a manager. "What will you do now?" Adam asked as they stood in the empty store after closing time. Fiona looked around at the shelves stocked with goods, the polished counter, and the large windows displaying wares to the street beyond. Despite the day's tension, she felt a growing sense of pride and possibility. "Run it myself, I suppose, at least until I can find someone trustworthy to help." She turned to Adam with a tentative smile. "It's not what I expected when I left Boston, but perhaps it's what I need: a challenge, a purpose." Adam studied her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "You're not what I expected either, Fiona Fitzgerald." "Is that a compliment, Marshal Vance?" she asked, feeling a surprising flutter in her chest. "The highest," he replied, the corners of his eyes crinkling as he smiled. Few people would face down outlaws, near death, and a thieving employee all within 24 hours of arriving in a new town and still stand tall. Fiona felt herself blushing under his admiring gaze. "I had help," she reminded him. "Quite heroic help, in fact." "I have a feeling you would have found a way, with or without me," Adam said. "But I'm glad I was there." He shifted, suddenly looking almost shy. "The town's holding a social on Saturday at the church, sort of a welcome to spring affair with music and food. Would you? That is, might you consider attending?" "With me?" The invitation took Fiona by surprise, but a warm pleasure spread through her at the thought. "I would like that very much, Adam." As he tipped his hat and turned to leave, Fiona knew that despite the dangers and difficulties of her arrival in Tanapa Junction, something precious and unexpected had begun something that might just make all the hardship worthwhile. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity as Fiona established herself as the new proprietress of Jenkins Mercantile. News of Pickering's disgrace spread quickly through Tonopah Junction, and Fiona found herself the subject of intense curiosity. Some customers came simply to gawk at the Eastern woman who had survived an outlaw attack and then ousted the long-standing manager, while others brought genuine welcome and offers of friendship. By Friday, Fiona had settled into a routine. She opened the store at 8 each morning, managed sales and inventory throughout the day, and spent evenings reviewing accounts and planning improvements. The work was exhausting but satisfying in a way her life in Boston had never been. Here, she was building something of her own, answering to no one but herself. Adam visited daily, sometimes briefly to check on her safety, other times staying longer to help with heavy lifting or to share a meal. With each visit, Fiona found herself more drawn to the tall Marshal. He was unlike any man she had known in Boston, direct yet gentle, strong yet unassuming, and possessed of a quiet integrity that seemed as much a part of him as his blue eyes or broad shoulders. Friday evening found Fiona standing before the small mirror in her bedroom, critically assessing her appearance. Tomorrow was the spring social, and she had spent her afternoon altering one of the few dresses that had survived in her trunk, a pale green muslin that she hoped would be appropriate for a frontier town gathering. A knock at the downstairs door interrupted her preparations. She descended cautiously, shotgun in hand, a habit she had developed since the attack. "Who is it?" she called through the closed door. "Adam Vance," came the familiar reply. Fiona unlocked the door, unable to suppress a smile at the sight of him. Adam stood on her doorstep holding a large wrapped package, his usually stern expression softened by what looked suspiciously like nervousness. "Good evening," she greeted him, setting aside the shotgun and ushering him in. "This is a pleasant surprise." "I hope I'm not interrupting," Adam said, glancing around the store with unusual awkwardness. "Not at all. I was just fretting over what to wear tomorrow," Fiona admitted, then immediately wished she hadn't. Such feminine concerns seemed trivial compared to the matters Adam typically dealt with. To her surprise, Adam's face brightened. "That's actually why I'm here." He extended the package. "I noticed your trunk didn't contain much suitable for our climate, so I took the liberty. That is, I thought you might find some use for this." Intrigued, Fiona accepted the package and carefully unwrapped it. Inside lay a beautiful dress of deep blue cotton, practical enough for frontier life but elegant in its simplicity, with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. "Adam," she breathed, running her fingers over the fabric. "It's lovely, but how did you?" "Mrs. Miller helped," he admitted, looking both proud and embarrassed. "She suggested the style and color, said it would match your eyes." Fiona was touched beyond words by the thoughtfulness of the gift. No one had ever given her something so personal, so perfectly suited to her new life. "Thank you," she said softly. "I'll wear it tomorrow." "There's something else," Adam said, reaching into his vest pocket. He withdrew a small leather pouch and handed it to her. "For protection when I'm not around." Inside the pouch, Fiona found a delicate but serviceable revolver, smaller than Adam's but clearly well made. "It's a Smith & Wesson pocket model," Adam explained. "More reliable than that Derringer you've been carrying, and with 5 shots instead of 2. Fiona carefully examined the weapon, appreciating both its practicality and the sentiment behind it. "You're determined to keep me safe, aren't you?" she asked, looking up at him. "Someone has to," Adam replied, his voice gruff with an emotion she couldn't quite identify. "You seem to have a talent for finding trouble. Or perhaps trouble has a talent for finding me," she countered with a small smile. Either way, I'm grateful for your concern." She hesitated, then added, "And for your friendship. These past days would have been much harder without you." Adam's expression softened further. "It's been no hardship, Fiona. Quite the opposite, in fact." They stood in silence for a moment, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Fiona was suddenly, acutely aware of how alone they were in the darkened store and how close Adam stood. His eyes dropped briefly to her lips, and her heart began to race. The moment was broken by the sound of raucous laughter from the street outside miners heading to the saloon for their Friday night revelry. Adam stepped back, clearing his throat. "I should let you get back to your evening," he said. "What time shall I call for you tomorrow? The social begins at 7, doesn't it?" "Perhaps 6:30, Adam nodded. 6:30 it is." He moved to the door, then paused, turning back to her. "Fiona." "Yes." She prompted when he didn't continue. He seemed to struggle with words, then simply said, "Sleep well," before stepping out into the night. Fiona locked the door behind him, then leaned against it, clutching the beautiful blue dress to her chest. She had come to Nevada territory seeking independence and a fresh start after years of living under her aunt's restrictive care in Boston. Romance had been the furthest thing from her mind, yet here she was, her heart fluttering like a schoolgirl's at the thought of tomorrow evening with Adam Vance. It was foolish, perhaps even dangerous to her hard-won independence, but she couldn't deny the truth. She was falling for the Marshal and falling hard. With a mixture of anticipation and trepidation, Fiona carried the dress upstairs, already imagining how it would look by the light of lanterns at tomorrow's social, and wondering what other surprises Tonopah Junction and its most honorable lawmen might have in store for her. Saturday evening arrived with a clarity of sky that seemed to amplify the excitement Fiona felt as she prepared for the social. The blue dress fit perfectly, as if made for her rather than hastily selected and altered. She had pinned her hair in a simpler style than she would have worn in Boston, with soft curls framing her face and a single blue ribbon as her only adornment. The small revolver Adam had given her was secured in a specially designed pocket sewn into the dress, another thoughtful detail that spoke of his concern for her safety even on what should be a carefree evening. At precisely 6:30, a knock sounded at the downstairs door. Fiona took a deep breath, checked her appearance one final time, and descended the stairs, her heart beating a rapid tattoo against her ribs. When she opened the door, the sight of Adam Vance nearly took her breath away. Gone was the dusty trail clothing and weathered leather vest. In their place, he wore a crisp white shirt, dark blue waistcoat, and clean black trousers. His badge still gleamed on his chest and his gun belt remained at his hip. A marshal was never truly off duty, but he had clearly made an effort for the occasion. Adam, for his part, seemed equally affected by her appearance. He stood silent for a moment, his blue eyes wide with appreciation. "You look beautiful," he finally said, the simple sincerity in his voice making the compliment more meaningful than any flowery praise. "Thank you," Fiona replied, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks. "You clean up rather nicely yourself, Marshal." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. High praise coming from a Boston lady. He offered his arm. "Shall we?" The walk to the church was short but memorable. Tonopah Junction looked different in the golden evening light, its rough edges softened, its possibilities highlighted. Other couples and families made their way in the same direction, nodding greetings or stopping to introduce themselves to Fiona. She was surprised by how many people already knew her name and story. "Word travels fast in a small town," Adam explained when she commented on this. "By now, everyone knows about the stagecoach attack, Pickering's dishonesty, and your takeover of the mercantile." And what did they say about me?" Fiona asked, curious about how she was perceived. Adam's eyes crinkled at the corners. "That you're either remarkably brave or remarkably foolish to stay after such a welcome. Some are taking bets on how long you'll last before fleeing back east." "And what did you bet?" she asked playfully. "That you'll still be running Jenkins Mercantile long after the gossips have found something new to talk about." Adam replied with such confidence that Fiona felt a surge of determination to prove him right. The church was the largest building in Tanapa Junction, a white-painted structure with a modest steeple that served as both house of worship and community gathering place. Tonight, its doors stood open, lanterns glowed in the windows, and the sounds of fiddle music and laughter spilled out into the evening air. Inside, the pews had been pushed back against the walls to create an open space for dancing. Tables laden with food lined one side of the room, and colorful bunting decorated the rafters. It was simpler than the formal balls Fiona had attended in Boston, but there was a warmth and genuine joy here that those stilted affairs had often lacked. Reverend Thomas, a kindly man with silver hair who had visited the Mercantile earlier in the week, spotted them immediately. "Marshal Vance, Miss Fitzgerald, welcome, welcome," he bustled over, his round face beaming. "So pleased you could join us for the spring social." "Miss Fitzgerald, we're all delighted to have you in our community." "Thank you, Reverend," Fiona replied, touched by the sincere welcome. "I'm happy to be here." "Marshal," the Reverend continued, "Mrs. Thomas was just asking if you might help move some of the heavier food platters." "She's over by the punch bowl." Adam glanced at Fiona. "Do you mind? I'll be right back." "Of course not," she assured him. "I'll be fine." As Adam made his way across the room, Fiona found herself quickly surrounded by curious townspeople. Mrs. Miller arrived with introductions to what seemed like half the women in Tanapa Junction, while various merchants expressed interest in potential business arrangements with the Mercantile. Fiona navigated the conversations with growing confidence, realizing that her years of managing social obligations in Boston had prepared her well for this aspect of her new role. These people might be more direct and less formal than those she had known in the East, but the fundamentals of human interaction remained the same. When Adam returned to her side, she was deep in conversation with Mr. Hollister, the owner of the hardware store, about potentially combining their orders to Sacramento for better shipping rates. "I see you're already building alliances," Adam commented after Mr. Hollister moved on. "Smart business strategy. A town this size needs cooperation among its merchants," Fiona replied, something Mr. Pickering seemed to have forgotten. Before Adam could respond, the fiddle player called out for everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, time for our first dance of the evening." Couples began forming up for a Virginia reel, and Adam turned to Fiona with a slightly uncertain expression. "Would you care to dance? I should warn you, I'm not particularly graceful." Fiona smiled, oddly touched by his admission. "I would be honored, graceful or not." As they took their places in the line, Fiona realized this was the first time they would touch beyond the brief contact of him helping her on and off a horse or steadying her after the attack. The thought sent a shiver of anticipation through her. The music began, and they moved through the figures of the dance. Adam had understated his abilities. While not the most polished dancer, he was sure-footed and attentive, his eyes rarely leaving hers as they circled each other, joined hands, and promenaded down the line. The dance ended all too soon, and Fiona found herself breathless not from exertion but from the intensity of Adam's gaze. They moved to the punch bowl, where he procured drinks for them both. "Not too different from your Boston parties, I hope?" he asked, handing her a cup. "Different in all the best ways," Fiona replied honestly. "There's a genuine warmth here. In Boston, social gatherings were more about positioning and politics than enjoyment. And yet you seem to navigate both worlds with ease," Adam observed. "It's remarkable how quickly you've adapted to life here." Fiona considered his words. "Perhaps because this feels more real somehow. In Boston, I was always my aunt's niece, defined by my family connections and the expectations that came with them. Here I'm just me. And who is that?" Adam asked softly. "Who is Fiona Fitzgerald when she's free to be herself?" The question caught her off guard with its perception. "I'm still discovering that," she admitted. "But I think she's someone who values honesty over pretense, who finds satisfaction in hard work, and who—" She hesitated, then finished. "Who isn't afraid to take risks for things that matter." Adam's expression grew serious. "Things like staying in a frontier town after nearly being killed on your first day, taking over a business you've never run, trusting a lawman you barely know." "Yes," Fiona said simply. "Those things exactly." They stood in silence for a moment, the noise and movement of the social fading into the background as they regarded each other with new understanding. The spell was broken when Reverend Thomas approached with a middle-aged couple in tow. "Marshal Vance, Miss Fitzgerald. Allow me to introduce Mr. and Mrs. Fletcher. They've just arrived from Sacramento and will be opening a photography studio in town." The introductions led to more conversation, then another dance, followed by supper at the long tables. Throughout the evening, Fiona was struck by how naturally she and Adam moved together, anticipating each other's needs and preferences, finding moments of private connection even in the bustling social gathering. It was nearly midnight when they finally left the church, Adam once again offering his arm for the walk back to the Mercantile. The spring night had turned cool, and Fiona was grateful for the warmth of his nearness. "Did you enjoy yourself?" Adam asked as they strolled down the quiet main street, moonlight silvering the dusty road. "More than I can say," Fiona replied truthfully. "It feels as though I've known these people for months rather than days." "They've taken to you," Adam said. "Not that I'm surprised. You have a way about you, Fiona Fitzgerald, a genuine interest in others that makes them want to know you in return." They reached the Mercantile too soon. Adam walked her to the door, where they both hesitated, neither quite ready for the evening to end. "Thank you for the dress," Fiona said, running her hands over the soft blue fabric, "and for the revolver and for everything these past days." "You're welcome," Adam replied, his voice lower than usual, "though I think I should be thanking you." "For what?" "For staying," he said simply. "For making Tanapa Junction a more interesting place than it was a week ago." The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibility. Fiona found herself holding her breath, wondering if Adam might kiss her, hoping that he would. Instead, he took her hand and raised it to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles that somehow felt more intimate than any embrace. "Good night, Fiona," he murmured against her skin. "Sleep well." "Good night, Adam," she whispered, reluctantly withdrawing her hand to unlock the door. He waited until she was safely inside before tipping his hat and turning toward his own quarters behind the marshal's office. Fiona watched him go, her hand still tingling from the touch of his lips, her heart full of emotions she wasn't quite ready to name. As she climbed the stairs to her rooms, Fiona knew with sudden clarity that whatever happened next in Tanapa Junction, there would be no returning to Boston. This place, with its challenges and dangers and unexpected joys with Adam Vance, had become home in a way she had never anticipated, but now couldn't imagine living without. The weeks following the spring social brought a steady rhythm to Fiona's life in Tanapa Junction. Each day at the Mercantile revealed new challenges and opportunities. from learning the intricacies of frontier supply chains to understanding the specific needs of her diverse clientele. Miners required sturdy tools and reliable equipment. Ranch wives sought quality fabrics and household necessities, and everyone depended on the staple goods that made life possible in the remote Nevada town. With Pickering gone, Fiona implemented changes that quickly improved both the store's profits and its standing in the community. She extended credit to reliable families who sometimes faced cash shortages between harvests or mining paydays, ordered a wider selection of goods tailored to local needs, and maintained fair prices that earned her the loyalty of Tonopah Junction's residents. 2 weeks after the social, she hired young Tommy Wilson, the blacksmith's 16-year-old son, as a stock boy and general assistant. The arrangement benefited them. Both Tommy earned money for his family while learning business skills, and Fiona gained an extra pair of hands and a native guide to local customs and personalities. Throughout these changes, Adam remained a constant presence in her life. His duties often took him away from town for days at a time, tracking criminals across the territory or escorting important shipments. But he always returned to Tonopah Junction and to Fiona. Their relationship grew with a natural ease that surprised them both, built on mutual respect and an increasingly undeniable attraction. They established traditions: Sunday dinners after church at the hotel dining room, evening walks along the creek that ran behind the town, and quiet conversations on the mercantile's porch after closing time. Adam helped Fiona master the use of her new revolver at an improvised shooting range outside town, while she taught him to appreciate the poetry books she had brought from Boston. The town watched their courtship with approving eyes. The marshal and the mercantile owner made a handsome couple, and their obvious regard for each other gave the gossips something positive to discuss for a change. By early summer, Fiona felt truly settled in Tonopah Junction. The nightmare of her arrival had faded somewhat, though she still kept the shotgun beside her bed and started at unexpected sounds. Her business was thriving. She had made genuine friends among the townspeople, and her feelings for Adam had deepened into something she now recognized as love, though neither had spoken the word aloud. Then came the day that threatened everything she had built. It began like any other Tuesday in June, with Fiona opening the store at 8 while Tommy swept the boardwalk outside. The morning passed in a pleasant blur of customers and conversation, with Adam stopping by midday to share news that he would be leaving the following morning to escort a gold shipment to Carson City. "I should be back by Saturday," he told her as they stood in the relative privacy of the storeroom. "Sunday dinner as usual. I'll be waiting," Fiona promised, her disappointment at his imminent departure tempered by the certainty of his return. This was the rhythm of their lives now, his departures followed by joyful reunions, each one strengthening the bond between them. Adam left shortly after, and Fiona returned to her customers, unaware that danger was approaching Tonopah Junction in the form of 3 dust-covered riders. The men entered the store just after 4 o'clock, when Tommy had stepped out to deliver an order to the doctor's wife and Fiona was alone behind the counter. Something about their appearance, the way they surveyed the room, the tension in their movements immediately put her on alert. "Afternoon, gentlemen." She greeted them with outward calm while her hand moved slowly toward the shelf beneath the counter where she kept her revolver. "What can I help you with today?" The tallest of the 3, a gaunt man with a scar running from his right eye to his jaw, stepped forward. "Just passing through, madam. Need some supplies." His eyes assessed her with calculated interest. "Don't recall seeing you last time we were in Tonopah Junction." "I've only been here since April," Fiona replied, keeping her voice even as she catalogued details about the men. Besides the tall one with the scar, there was a heavy-set man with a red beard and a younger one, barely more than a boy, with nervous eyes that kept darting toward the door. All three wore trail-worn clothes and gun belts that showed frequent use. April, huh? The tall man leaned on the counter. That's interesting. We had some friends pass this way in April, Harkins and his boys. You wouldn't happen to have run into them, would you? Ice flooded Fiona's veins at the name. These men were connected to the gang that had attacked her stagecoach, possibly the remnants of the gang itself. She forced herself to maintain her composure, aware that her life might depend on her next words. I believe I heard something about a Harkins gang, she said carefully. There was trouble with a stagecoach, as I understand it. The scarred man's eyes narrowed. That's right. And word is, a marshal named Vance killed all four of them. Same marshal who's been seen spending a lot of time right here in this store. The younger man shifted nervously. Decker, maybe we should just get what we need and move on. Don't want no trouble. Shut up, Billy, the one called Decker snapped, his gaze never leaving Fiona. This lady and I are having a conversation about my brother Reed Harkins and how he ended up dead on the trail to Tanapa Junction. Brother. The word echoed in Fiona's mind as she realized the full danger of her situation. This wasn't a random encounter. These men had come seeking revenge for their fallen kin. I'm sorry for your loss, she said, calculating the distance to her weapon, wondering if Tommy would return soon or if anyone would hear if she screamed. But I'm just a shopkeeper. Marshal Vance handles law enforcement in the territory. Decker's face twisted into an ugly smile. Oh, we'll deal with the marshal too. But first, I think we might spend some time with you, Miss Fitzgerald, Fiona supplied, refusing to show fear despite the threat implicit in his words. Fiona Fitzgerald. Well, Miss Fitzgerald, Decker drawled, you're going to close up your store now and come with us. We've got some questions about exactly what happened to Reed and the boys and about your friend the marshal. The red-bearded man moved to the windows, pulling down the shades, while the younger one, Billy, locked the front door. Fiona knew she had seconds to act before she lost any chance of escape. With a swift movement born of weeks of practice with Adam, she reached beneath the counter, grabbed her revolver and leveled it at Decker's chest. Step back, she commanded, her voice steadier than she felt. All of you. I don't want to shoot anyone, but I will if you force me. Decker's surprise quickly gave way to amusement. Well now, looks like the shopkeeper has some spirit. He hadn't drawn his own weapon yet, seemingly unconcerned by hers. You really think you can take all three of us, Miss Fitzgerald? Maybe not, Fiona admitted, keeping the gun trained on him. But I can certainly take you, Mr. Harkins, and I doubt your friends here are willing to die for your revenge. A flash of uncertainty crossed the younger man's face, confirming Fiona's assessment. Billy, at least, had little stomach for violence against a woman. The tension in the store was broken by the sound of the back door opening, followed by Tommy's cheerful call. Miss Fitzgerald. I'm back from the doctor's, his words cut off as he entered the main room and took in the scene. Before anyone could react, he bolted back through the storeroom. Get him, Decker shouted to the red-bearded man, who immediately gave chase. In the moment of distraction, Fiona made her decision. She fired a shot at Decker, who dove to the side with a curse as the bullet splintered the shelf behind him. Instantly, the store erupted into chaos. Decker drew his own weapon and returned fire as Fiona ducked behind the heavy oak counter. Bullets thudded into wood as Fiona crawled toward the end of the counter, seeking better cover. She heard shouts from outside. Tommy must have raised the alarm in town. If she could just hold out until help arrived. A shadow fell across her as Decker vaulted over the counter, his gun aimed at her face. "Drop it," he snarled. Fiona knew she had lost this round. Slowly, she placed her revolver on the floor, her mind racing for any possible escape. "You've caused me a lot of trouble, Miss Fitzgerald," Decker said, grabbing her arm and yanking her to her feet. "Change of plans. We're leaving now and you're coming with us. Insurance, you might say." The red-bearded man returned, breathing heavily. "Kid got away." "Whole town stirring up like an anthill." "Doesn't matter," Decker replied, keeping his gun pressed to Fiona's side. "We've got what we came for. Billy, get the horses. We're riding out the back way." Fiona's mind calculated frantically. Adam was likely already on his way to Carson City. The town had no deputy, just a night watchman who was more suited to breaking up drunken brawls than confronting hardened outlaws. If these men got her out of town, her chances of survival would plummet. "Listen to me," she said urgently as Billy unlocked the front door to slip out. "Marshal Vance isn't here. He left for Carson City hours ago. Taking me will only bring the territorial authorities down on you." "Good," Decker growled. "I want him to come after us. That's the whole point." A terrible understanding dawned on Fiona. "You're using me as bait." Decker's scarred face split into a cold smile. "Smart woman. Now move." They forced her through the storeroom and out the back door where Billy already waited with 3 horses. The alley behind the mercantile was still empty, though Fiona could hear shouting from the main street. Just a few more minutes and someone might think to check the back of the store. "Get on," Decker ordered, shoving her toward his horse. Fiona hesitated, wondering if she should risk making a run for it. Before she could decide, the red-bearded man raised his gun butt and struck her temple, the same spot that had been injured in the stagecoach attack. Pain exploded through her head, and darkness crowded the edges of her vision. Her last coherent thought as they hoisted her semi-conscious body onto Decker's horse was of Adam, and the terrible knowledge that when he discovered what had happened, he would come for her walking straight into the trap Decker Harkins had set. Adam Vance rode hard toward Tonopah Junction, his face grim and his body tense with a fear he hadn't felt since his days in the war. The gold shipment to Carson City lay forgotten, handed off to another marshal he'd encountered on the trail after receiving the news that had sent him racing back toward the town he'd come to consider home. "Marshal," a young ranch hand had called, galloping up to his camp just after dawn. "Message from Tonopah Junction. There's been trouble." The boy's words still rang in Adam's ears as he pushed his horse to its limits. Harkin's brother came with 2 men. They took Miss Fitzgerald. Tommy Wilson raised the alarm, but they were gone before anyone could stop them. "Mayor says to tell you they headed northwest into the high country." Northwest meant the labyrinth of canyons and abandoned mining claims that stretched toward the Sierra Nevada rough country, where a man could hide for months if he knew the terrain. Decker Harkins, according to the Telegraph reports Adam had received, knew it well. Adam had been tracking outlaws for years, but never with such personal stakes. The thought of Fiona in the hands of a man seeking revenge for his brother's death drove him with a desperate intensity that left no room for fatigue or hesitation. By midday, he reached Tonopah Junction, riding straight to his office where Mayor Collins and several townsmen waited. Tommy Wilson sat on a bench, his young face bruised but determined. "Tell me everything," Adam demanded as he dismounted. "They came in just after 4, Tommy recounted, the words tumbling out. "I was making a delivery to Mrs. Miller. When I came back, they had Miss Fitzgerald at gunpoint. I ran to get help, but the big one with the red beard chased me." He touched the bruise on his cheek. "Caught me in the alley, but I fought him off enough to get away. By the time we organized a search party, they were long gone. Mayor Collins added. We found sign heading northwest, just like I sent word. 3 horses, 1 carrying double. Adam nodded, already mentally cataloging what he would need. Decker Harkins wants me to follow him. This is a trap. Then don't go alone, Collins urged. We can form a posse. No, Adam interrupted. Most of you aren't trackers or fighters. In that terrain, a large group would be spotted miles away. His jaw tightened. Besides, Decker will kill her at the first sign of a posse. He wants me, not a fight with the whole town. You can't face 3 gunmen alone, the mayor protested. Adam checked his ammunition and gathered additional supplies from the cabinet behind his desk. I won't be fighting fair, he replied grimly. I'll be hunting them. Within 30 minutes, Adam had exchanged his tired mount for a fresh horse, packed provisions for several days, and armed himself with not only his revolver but a Winchester rifle and a shotgun. The townspeople watched in somber silence as he prepared to depart, understanding that their marshal was setting out on what might be his final mission. Tommy approached as Adam tightened the saddle girth. Marshal, the boy said hesitantly, Miss Fitzgerald. She was real brave. Shot at the leader and everything. I just wanted you to know. Adam's hand stilled for a moment. That sounds like her, he said softly, the pride in his voice tempered by fear for what that courage might have cost her. Bring her back, Marshal, Tommy said, his young voice cracking. She's the best thing that happened to this town since. Well, since you came. Adam clasped the boy's shoulder. I will, Tommy. One way or another, I'll bring her home. With those words, he mounted and rode out, following the faint trail that led northwest into increasingly rugged terrain. As the town disappeared behind him, Adam allowed himself to acknowledge the emotion that had been driving him since he'd heard the news, a bone-deep fear, unlike anything he'd known before. In the months since Fiona had arrived in Tonopah Junction, she had become essential to him in ways he hadn't believed possible after the losses of his past. Her intelligence, her courage, her genuine goodness had awakened feelings he'd thought long buried after his wife's death during the war. He had been careful, perhaps too careful, taking things slowly, not wanting to rush her or presume upon their growing closeness. Now he might lose her before he'd ever told her what she truly meant to him. That thought drove Adam forward as the afternoon sun beat down and the trail grew fainter. He was no longer just a marshal pursuing outlaws. He was a man fighting for the woman he loved, and he would not rest until he found her, miles ahead, in a crumbling miner's cabin nestled against a canyon wall. Fiona Fitzgerald struggled against the ropes binding her wrists. Her head throbbed where she'd been struck, and her mouth was dry from the dust of their hard ride, and the gag Decker had finally removed upon reaching their destination. Don't waste your energy, Decker advised from where he sat by the single grimy window, rifle across his knees. Those knots were tied by a man who worked cattle for 15 years. You're not getting loose. Fiona stopped pulling at the ropes but kept her back straight and her gaze steady. Hours of fear and discomfort had not broken her resolve to survive this ordeal. Your brother attacked innocent people, she said, her voice hoarse but clear. He would have killed me if Marshal Vance hadn't stopped him. Decker's eyes hardened. Reed was many things, but he was still my brother, the only family I had left in this world. He leaned forward. Do you know what that's like, Miss Fitzgerald, to be completely alone? Yes, Fiona answered truthfully, thinking of the parents she'd lost to illness, the controlling aunt whose house she'd fled, the uncle she'd never had a chance to know. I know exactly what that's like. Something flickered in Decker's expression, surprise, perhaps, at finding a point of connection with his captive. The red-bearded man, whom Fiona had learned was called Muldoon, snorted dismissively from his position by the door. Don't let her soft talk fool you, Decker. She's still the Marshal's woman." "I'm no one's woman," Fiona retorted with a flash of her usual spirit. "I'm a business owner who happens to be courted by Marshal Vance. There's a difference." Billy, the youngest of the group, gave a surprised laugh that he quickly smothered when Decker glared at him. Of the three, Billy seemed the most uncomfortable with their plan. He had been almost apologetic when securing her bonds and had offered her water during their journey. "How long do you plan to keep me here?" Fiona asked, trying to engage Decker in conversation. The longer she could keep him talking, the more she might learn about his intentions and the more time Adam would have to find them, if he was indeed coming after her as Decker expected. "As long as it takes for your Marshal to show up," Decker replied. "Could be tomorrow, could be 3 days from now. Depends on how good a tracker he is." "And then what?" Fiona pressed. Though she feared she already knew the answer, Decker's scarred face twisted into a cold smile. "Then I kill him, slowly, while you watch." He leaned closer. "And then, Miss Fitzgerald, you and I will have a reckoning of our own. You were there when Reed died. Seems fitting you should join him." The brutality of his plan sent a chill through Fiona, but she refused to show fear. "Marshal Vance won't walk blindly into your trap. He's smarter than that." "Maybe," Decker acknowledged. "But a man in love doesn't always think clearly, and from what I hear, your Marshal is very much in love." He studied her face. "Question is, how much is he willing to risk for you?" "Enough to die for." Fiona kept her expression neutral, but inwardly his words sparked both hope and dread. Was Adam truly in love with her, as she was with him? And if so, would that love drive him to take dangerous risks to save her? The afternoon waned toward evening, and Muldoon lit a small fire in the cabin's decrepit stove, careful to keep the smoke minimal. The smell of coffee and beans cooking soon filled the single room, making Fiona acutely aware of her hunger. She hadn't eaten since midday at the Mercantile. To her surprise, Billy brought her a tin plate of beans and a cup of coffee, helping her eat since her hands remained bound. "Thank you," she said quietly, searching the young man's face. He couldn't be more than 20, with none of the hardness that marked his companions. "Don't thank me," he muttered, glancing nervously at Decker, who was occupied with cleaning his revolver. "I didn't sign up for taking women hostage. This ain't right." "Then help me," Fiona whispered, hope flaring. "Untie me when they're sleeping. You don't have to be part of this." Billy's eyes widened with fear. "I can't. Decker would hunt me down same as he's hunting Vance." He shook his head. "I'm sorry, truly." Before Fiona could say more, Muldoon approached. "Quit coddling the prisoner, Billy. Your watch is next. I need some shut-eye." The night descended with agonizing slowness. Fiona dozed fitfully, awakening often to the sounds of the men shifting positions or stepping outside to check the perimeter of their hideout. Her thoughts continuously returned to Adam, wondering where he was, whether he was following their trail, what plan he might be forming to rescue her. Sometime in the darkest hours before dawn, she awoke to find Decker watching her from his seat by the window, his face ghostly in the faint moonlight filtering through the dirty glass. "You should have died with the others on that stagecoach," he said conversationally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Would have been cleaner that way for everyone." "Is that what you tell yourself about all the people you've killed?" Fiona asked, matching his quiet tone. "That it would have been cleaner if they'd just died when you wanted them to." Decker's mouth twitched. "You've got spirit, I'll give you that. Makes me almost regret what's coming." He shifted, checking the darkness outside before returning his gaze to her. "You know, Reed wasn't always like he was at the end. We had a ranch once, legitimate work. Then the drought came, the bank foreclosed, and we found out how little the law cares about working men." Despite herself, Fiona felt a flicker of understanding. "That's tragic, but it doesn't justify murdering innocent people." "Maybe not to you," Decker shrugged. "But out here a man makes his own justice. Your marshal should understand that better than most." "Adam enforces the law," Fiona countered. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Decker leaned forward. "Ask him sometime how many men he's killed. Ask him if he's always sure they deserved it." He smiled thinly at her expression. "Thought so. You don't really know him at all, do you?" His words struck deeper than Fiona wanted to admit. Though she and Adam had shared much in their months together, there remained aspects of his past. He rarely discussed, particularly his time during and immediately after the war, when he had first pinned on a lawman's badge. "I know enough," she said firmly. "I know he's a good man doing an honorable job in difficult circumstances." Decker laughed softly. "We'll see how honorable he is when he's watching you die." He stood, stretching. "Get some rest, Miss Fitzgerald. Tomorrow promises to be eventful for both of us." As Decker moved away to wake Billy for the next watch, Fiona closed her eyes, not wanting him to see the tears that threatened. Despite her brave words, fear clawed at her resolve. Not fear for herself, though the prospect of death terrified her, but fear for Adam, that he would indeed walk into Decker's trap out of love for her. "Please be careful," she whispered into the darkness, as if her words could somehow reach across the miles to the man she loved. "Please don't die because of me." Outside the cabin, the night winds whispered through the canyon, carrying her prayer into the vast Nevada sky. Somewhere in that same darkness, Adam Vance continued his relentless pursuit, guided by starlight, trail sign, and the unwavering certainty that he would find Fiona or die trying. The breaking dawn found Adam crouched on a rocky outcrop overlooking a narrow canyon, his field glasses trained on a dilapidated cabin nestled against the far wall. Thin smoke rose from its chimney, confirming his suspicions that this abandoned mining claim had become Decker Harkin's hideout. After a night of careful tracking, following signs that grew increasingly difficult to discern in the rocky terrain, he had finally located his quarry. Now came the most dangerous part: determining if Fiona was alive and how to get her out safely. Adam had abandoned his horse 2 miles back, approaching on foot to reduce the chance of detection. The rising sun cast long shadows through the canyon, providing some cover as he studied the cabin and its surroundings. He counted 3 horses picketed in a small natural corral behind the structure, confirming that all 3 outlaws remained with their captive. Movement at the cabin door drew his attention. The red-bearded man Muldoon, according to the wanted posters, emerged, stretching and scanning the canyon rim in a cursory fashion before heading toward a nearby stream with canteens. Adam ducked lower, though he was well concealed and distant enough to avoid casual detection. When Muldoon returned to the cabin, Adam began formulating his approach. A frontal assault was out of the question. Decker would kill Fiona at the first sign of attack. He needed to separate the outlaws, deal with them one by one, and somehow get to Fiona before Decker realized what was happening. The terrain would help. The canyon walls provided multiple approaches, and the abandoned mining equipment scattered around the area offered potential cover. But time was against him. With each passing hour, Decker might grow more impatient, more unpredictable. Adam worked his way down from the outcrop and began circling toward the back of the canyon, staying high on the slope where loose rocks and sparse vegetation provided both cover and a clear view of the cabin. By mid-morning, he had positioned himself above and behind the structure, where he could observe the small corral containing the outlaws' horses. It was there that opportunity presented itself. The youngest outlaw, little more than a boy, really emerged from the cabin and made his way to the horses, carrying a saddle and bridle. Adam watched as the young man prepared to ride out, presumably to keep watch on the trail into the canyon. This was the chance Adam had been waiting for to reduce the odds and perhaps gain information. He made his way swiftly but silently down the slope, timing his approach to intercept the young outlaw as he rode toward a narrow side canyon that would serve as an excellent lookout point. When the rider was sufficiently distant from the cabin, Adam stepped out from behind a boulder, his rifle leveled at the young man's chest. "Hands up," he commanded quietly. "Nice and slow." The outlaw froze, his face draining of color as he recognized Adam. "Marshal Vance," he whispered, raising his hand shakily. "That's right," Adam confirmed. "Now dismount. Left side, easy does it." The young man complied, practically falling from his horse in his nervousness. "I didn't want no part of taking the woman," he blurted. "That was Decker's idea. I told him it wasn't right." "Yet here you are," Adam observed coldly, keeping his rifle trained on the outlaw as he used his free hand to relieve him of his revolver. "What's your name, son?" Billy Colton." His voice trembled. "Please don't kill me, Marshal. I ain't never killed nobody." Adam studied the young man's frightened face. "Miss Fitzgerald, is she alive?" Billy nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. Decker's keeping her in the cabin. He's waiting for you." "I figured as much," Adam replied. "Has he harmed her?" "No, not really. Hit her when we took her, but nothing since." Billy swallowed hard. "But he plans to, Marshal, once he's got you. He wants you to watch while he—" He couldn't finish the sentence. A cold rage filled Adam at the confirmation of his worst fears, but he kept his voice level. "Here's what's going to happen, Billy. You're going to tell me exactly how many men are in that cabin, where they're positioned, and where Miss Fitzgerald is being held. Then you're going to quietly mount your horse and ride to Tanapa Junction to turn yourself in. If you do that, I'll tell the judge you cooperated." Relief flooded Billy's face. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet," Adam cautioned. "If you try to double-cross me, or if Miss Fitzgerald has been harmed beyond what you've told me, I'll hunt you to the ends of the earth." "Understood," Billy nodded frantically. "Just Decker and Muldoon in the cabin now. Decker stays by the front window mostly, watching the main trail. Muldoon moves around more. The lady is tied to a chair in the back corner, away from the windows. Decker's careful keeps her where she can't be seen from outside and where he can reach her quick if there's trouble." Adam processed this information, adjusting his mental map of the cabin. "Weapons? Decker's got a revolver and a Winchester. Muldoon carries 2 revolvers and a shotgun. There's more ammunition in Decker's saddlebags. What's Decker's plan if he spots me coming?" Billy hesitated. "He figures you'll try to negotiate for the lady, wants to get you inside the cabin, make you throw down your weapons. Then—" He looked away. "Then he plans to make you watch while he kills her, before killing you slow." Adam's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "Mount up, Billy. Ride for Tanapa Junction. Tell the mayor I found them and will be bringing Miss Fitzgerald home." "What about Decker and Muldoon?" Billy asked, clearly torn between fear of Adam and fear of his former companions. "Let me worry about them," Adam replied grimly. "Now go, before I change my mind about letting you leave." Billy needed no further encouragement. He scrambled onto his horse and rode off down the canyon, frequently glancing back as if expecting Adam to shoot him in the back, despite their agreement. Adam watched until he was out of sight, then turned his attention back to the cabin. Now the odds were better 2 against 1, and he had the advantage of surprise and position. But Fiona's safety complicated matters immeasurably. Any direct attack risked her life, yet delay only gave Decker more time to grow suspicious about Billy's absence. Adam worked his way closer to the cabin, using the scattered mining equipment and natural features for cover. By noon, he was positioned behind an abandoned ore cart less than 50 yards from the back of the structure. From here, he could see Muldoon exit occasionally to check the horses or get water, while Decker remained mostly inside. The hours dragged by as Adam waited for the right moment. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and he rationed his canteen water carefully, knowing that dehydration could dull his reflexes when he needed them most. Finally, as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, opportunity presented itself. Muldoon emerged from the cabin, shotgun in hand, and began walking toward the horses with purpose. Adam could hear him cursing about that damn kid taking too long on watch. This was it. Muldoon was going to look for Billy. If he rode out, Adam would have only Decker to deal with. He held his position, barely breathing as Muldoon saddled his horse and mounted up, still grumbling audibly about the unreliability of youth. As Muldoon rode past Adam's position toward the mouth of the canyon, Adam made his decision. In one fluid motion, he rose from behind the ore cart, aimed his Winchester, and fired. Muldoon toppled from his horse without a sound, dead before he hit the ground with a bullet through his heart. The shot echoed through the canyon, and Adam immediately moved positions, knowing Decker would be alerted. He circled toward the front of the cabin, where a partly collapsed lean-to offered cover with a view of the main door and window. "Muldoon," Decker's voice called from inside. When no answer came, he shouted louder, "Muldoon, what was that shot?" Adam remained silent, knowing that uncertainty would force Decker to make a move. Sure enough, after a tense minute, the cabin door cracked open and Decker's voice rang out again. "I know you're out there, Vance." "Had to be you that shot Muldoon." Still, Adam didn't respond, using the time to edge closer to the cabin's blind side where a small window might offer access. "I've got your woman in here," Decker continued, his voice taking on a desperate edge. "You try anything and she dies first. You hear me?" From his new position, Adam could just make out Fiona through the dirty window glass. She sat tied to a chair, her face bruised but her posture defiant. Decker stood near her, his gun pressed to her temple, his attention focused on the front door. Adam's heart pounded as he assessed the situation. He had one chance, a nearly impossible shot through the window that would have to hit Decker without endangering Fiona. The slightest miscalculation would result in her death. As if sensing his presence, Fiona's eyes suddenly shifted toward the window. For the briefest moment, their gazes met across the dusty glass. No words were needed. He could read her trust and her determination in that single glance. Then, with a deliberate movement that Decker failed to notice, Fiona leaned slightly away from the gun at her temple, creating just enough separation for Adam to take his shot. Time seemed to slow as Adam raised his rifle, steadied his breathing, and squeezed the trigger. The window glass shattered an instant before Decker's head jerked back, a look of surprise frozen on his face as he collapsed to the floor. Adam was through the broken window before the echo of the shot had faded, moving to Fiona's side with his knife already drawn to cut her bonds. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently, his hands gentle as he freed her wrists. "No," Fiona whispered, her voice hoarse but steady. "I knew you'd come." As the last of the ropes fell away, Fiona stood on shaky legs and fell into Adam's embrace. He held her tightly, one hand cradling her head protectively as months of unspoken feelings culminated in this moment of desperate relief. "I thought I'd lost you," Adam murmured into her hair, "when I heard they'd taken you." Fiona pulled back just enough to look up at his face, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "They wanted you, Adam. This was all a trap to get you to follow them." "I know," he said simply. "It wouldn't have mattered if there'd been 20 of them waiting. I would still have come for you." The raw emotion in his voice broke through the last of Fiona's composure. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she pressed her face against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear. "I was so afraid," she admitted. "Not of dying, but of being the cause of your death. Of never seeing you again, of never telling you." Adam tilted her chin up gently. "Telling me what?" he asked, his blue eyes searching hers. "That I love you," Fiona said, the words falling from her lips as naturally as breathing. "I've loved you since, I don't even know when. Perhaps from the moment you appeared on that ridge during the stagecoach attack, or from our first dinner at the hotel, or from the spring social when you danced with me. I just know that I love you, Adam Vance, and I couldn't bear to lose you." For a moment, Adam stood perfectly still, as if absorbing her words. Then he lowered his head and kissed her with a tenderness that belied the violence of the past hours. Fiona responded with all the emotion she had held in check during her captivity, her hands clinging to his shoulders as if to assure herself that he was real, that they were both alive. When they finally broke apart, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "I love you too," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "More than I thought possible after losing Alina in the war. I was afraid to say it, afraid I'd scare you away or that you'd think it was too soon. But when I heard they'd taken you—" He shook his head, unable to complete the thought. Fiona touched his face, tracing the lines of worry and exhaustion that marked his features. "You found me. You saved me. Again. And I always will," Adam promised, "for as long as you'll have me." They stood together in the gathering shadows of the cabin, surrounded by the evidence of violence but focused only on each other and the precious gift of survival. Outside, the sun sank below the canyon rim, and the first stars appeared in the deepening blue of the Nevada sky, silent witnesses to a love that had endured its first great trial and emerged stronger for the testing. After ensuring that both Decker and Muldoon were indeed dead, Adam helped Fiona outside to sit in the fresh air while he prepared their departure. The night was coming on quickly, and though they both longed for the safety and comfort of Tonopah Junction, Adam judged it too dangerous to attempt the difficult journey through the canyons in darkness. "We'll leave at first light," he told Fiona, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders as they sat by a small fire outside the cabin. He couldn't bear to keep her inside with the grim reminder of her captivity. "I've got provisions in my pack, and there's a stream nearby for fresh water." Fiona nodded, leaning against his shoulder. The events of the past 2 days had left her physically and emotionally drained, but the solid presence of Adam beside her was gradually restoring her equilibrium. "What happened to the young one, Billy?" "I sent him to Tonopah Junction to turn himself in," Adam explained, putting another small branch on the fire. "He seemed more misguided than evil. With Decker's influence gone, he might have a chance at a better life after serving his time." "I hope so," Fiona said softly. "He was kinder to me than the others, brought me water and food when Decker wasn't looking." Adam's arm tightened around her. "I'm sorry I wasn't there to prevent any of this. If I hadn't left for Carson City—" "Don't," Fiona interrupted, placing her hand over his. "This wasn't your fault. Decker would have found another opportunity if not this one. He was determined to avenge his brother." They sat in silence for a while, watching the flames dance in the gathering darkness. Then Fiona asked the question that had nagged at her since her conversation with Decker during the night. "Adam, how many men have you killed? As a marshal, I mean." He stiffened slightly beside her, and for a moment she feared she had overstepped. But then he sighed, his breath visible in the cool night air. 13, including Decker and Muldoon today. Each one in the line of duty, each one a threat to innocent lives." He paused. "Why do you ask?" "Decker said something that troubled me," Fiona admitted. "He suggested that there's little difference between how you enforce justice and how he and his brother made their own." Adam was quiet for so long that Fiona began to worry she had wounded him with the question. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but clear. There were times, early in my career, when I asked myself the same thing. The line between lawman and outlaw can seem thin out here, where civilization is still taking root. He shifted to look directly at her. The difference is in why we act and how. I've never taken a life except to protect others, never drawn my gun in anger or for personal gain. Every death weighs on me, Fiona. I remember each face, each name when I can learn it. The firelight illuminated the sincerity in his eyes, the burden of responsibility he carried. Fiona reached up to touch his cheek. "I believe you," she said simply. "I just wanted to hear it from you, not from him." Adam caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. "No more secrets between us," he promised. "Not about my past, not about anything. If we're to build a life together, it has to be based on complete trust." The words "build a life together" sent a warmth through Fiona that had nothing to do with the fire. "Is that what you want?" she asked softly. "A life together." In answer, Adam reached into his shirt pocket and withdrew a small object that glinted in the firelight. "I've been carrying this for weeks," he said, opening his hand to reveal a simple gold ring with a small diamond, waiting for the right moment, gathering my courage. Fiona stared at the ring, her heart racing. "Adam, I had planned to ask you after returning from Carson City," he continued, a rueful smile touching his lips. "Had it all planned out: dinner at the hotel, a walk by the creek where the wildflowers are blooming. Not exactly how I imagined this moment, sitting outside a killer's hideout with 2 dead bodies inside." Despite everything, or perhaps because of all they had endured, Fiona found herself laughing. "It's perfectly appropriate," she assured him. "Nothing about our story has been conventional from the start." Adam's smile widened, and he took her left hand in his. "Fiona Fitzgerald, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, the mother of my children, for as long as we both shall live?" Tears welled in Fiona's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow or fear. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Adam Vance, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if always meant to be there, and then kissed her with a tenderness that made her previous fears seem like distant shadows. In that moment, surrounded by the wild beauty of the Nevada night, Fiona knew with absolute certainty that she had found her home, not in a place, but in a person. When they finally broke apart, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "I promise you, Fiona, whatever comes next, we face it together." "Together," she agreed, sealing the promise with another kiss. They spent the night beneath the stars, wrapped in blankets and each other's arms, finding comfort and security in their shared love, despite the dangerous circumstances that had brought them to this moment. And as dawn broke over the eastern canyon rim, they began the journey back to Tonopah Junction, not as marshal and shopkeeper, but as future husband and wife, bonded by trials overcome, and a love that had proven stronger than fear, distance, or death itself. The autumn sun cast a golden glow over Tonopah Junction as townsfolk gathered in front of the white-painted church. Harvest decorations adorned the porch: pumpkins, dried corn husks, and bundles of late-blooming wildflowers collected by the schoolchildren. Inside, every pew was filled with miners, ranchers, merchants, and their families, all dressed in their Sunday best for the most anticipated wedding the town had seen in years. 3 months had passed since Adam had brought Fiona safely home from Decker Harkin's hideout. 3 months of healing, of building, of planning for a shared future that once might have seemed impossible to either of them. The events of those harrowing days had transformed both their relationship and the town's perception of them. No longer were they merely the respected marshal and the eastern shopkeeper, they were Tanapa Junction's very own love story, a testament to courage, perseverance, and the unexpected blessings that could emerge from even the darkest circumstances. In the small back room of the church, Fiona stood before a mirror, hardly recognizing the woman who looked back at her. Sarah Miller fussed with the drape of Fiona's wedding gown, a creation of ivory satin and delicate lace that had arrived by special order from Sacramento just 3 days earlier. Her hair was arranged in an elegant updo, adorned with small white flowers, and around her neck hung a simple pearl pendant that had been her mother's, the one family heirloom she had brought with her from Boston. "You look absolutely beautiful," Sarah declared, stepping back to admire her handiwork. "Adam won't be able to take his eyes off you," Fiona smiled, her cheeks flushing with pleasure and anticipation. "I can hardly believe this day is finally here," she admitted. "Sometimes it feels like a dream." "A dream well earned," Sarah replied firmly. "After everything you two have been through, you deserve every happiness." A knock at the door announced the arrival of Mayor Collins, who had volunteered to escort Fiona down the aisle in the absence of her father. "Ladies," he called, "Reverend Thomas says it's time." Sarah gave Fiona's hand a quick squeeze. "Ready to become Mrs. Vance?" "More than ready," Fiona replied with certainty, gathering her bouquet of autumn roses and native sage. The music from the church's small organ swelled as Fiona took Mayor Collins' arm and prepared to enter the sanctuary. As the doors opened and she took her first step down the aisle, the congregation rose as one, faces turning to watch her progress. But Fiona saw only Adam, standing tall and handsome beside Reverend Thomas at the altar. He wore a new black suit with a silver brocade waistcoat, his marshal's badge polished to a high shine on his lapel. His usually wind-tousled hair was neatly combed, and his face was freshly shaven, but it was the look in his eyes as he watched her approach that took Fiona's breath away, a mixture of love, pride, and a wonder that matched her own. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotion. Fiona and Adam exchanged vows they had written themselves, promises of love, fidelity, and partnership that acknowledged both the dangers of their frontier life and the strength they found in each other. When Adam slipped the gold band onto her finger to join her engagement ring, his hands were steady, but his voice trembled slightly with the depth of his feeling. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Thomas declared with evident satisfaction. "Marshal Vance, you may kiss your bride." The kiss they shared was brief but heartfelt, mindful of their audience yet unable to fully contain the joy of the moment. As they turned to face the congregation, hands clasped tightly together, the church erupted in applause and cheers. "Ladies and gentlemen," the Reverend announced, "I present to you Marshal and Mrs. Adam Vance." The celebration that followed at the town hall was the most festive event Tanapa Junction had witnessed in years. Tables groaned under the weight of potluck dishes contributed by every household, a testament to the community's affection for the couple. The miners' band played lively tunes that had dancers of all ages filling the floor, while children darted between tables, fueled by excitement and cake frosting. Adam and Fiona danced the first waltz alone, moving with a synchronicity that seemed to reflect their relationship, two independent people who had learned to move through life as one. "Happy, Mrs. Vance," Adam murmured against her ear as they circled the floor. "Completely," Fiona replied, glowing with contentment. "Though I must say, it feels strange to have a new name after all these months of being Miss Fitzgerald." "You'll always be Fiona Fitzgerald to me," Adam assured her with a smile. The brave Boston lady who shot at outlaws and faced down embezzlers within her first week in Nevada. Fiona laughed, remembering those tumultuous early days with a fondness that would have seemed impossible at the time. "And you'll always be my heroic marshal, riding to my rescue at just the right moment." As the evening progressed, they made their way among their guests, accepting congratulations and good wishes from what seemed like every resident of Tanapa Junction. Tommy Wilson, now Fiona's full-time assistant at the Mercantile, presented them with a hand-carved wooden sign for their new home. "The Vances ESD, October 12, 1873. "I made it myself," he said proudly. "Mr. Johnson at the hardware store helped with the lettering." "It's wonderful, Tommy," Fiona said, genuinely touched. "We'll hang it by the front door as soon as we're settled." The new home was a subject of some gossip in town. Rather than moving into Adam's modest quarters behind the marshal's office or residing above the Mercantile, they had purchased a small ranch just outside town, a property with a sturdy house, a barn, and enough land for a garden and a few horses. The previous owner, an elderly widower, had been eager to sell and move east to live with his daughter, making the timing perfect for the newlyweds. "The Mercantile will remain Jenkins Mercantile," Fiona had explained to curious customers. "My uncle built that business, and his name deserves to continue. Besides, everyone knows it by that name." In truth, the decision to maintain her independence as a business owner had been fully supported by Adam. "I didn't fall in love with you because you needed rescuing," he had told her when they discussed their future. "I fell in love with your strength, your intelligence, your determination to make your own way. The last thing I want is for you to give that up." Their marriage would be a partnership in the truest sense, Adam continuing his duties as marshal while Fiona ran the Mercantile, both contributing to their shared life and goals. It was an arrangement that raised some eyebrows among the more traditional elements of Tanapa Junction society, but one that felt absolutely right to both of them. As the celebration continued into the night, Adam drew Fiona away from the crowd and outside onto the town hall's small porch. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves, and the stars spread across the vast Nevada sky like diamonds scattered on black velvet. "I have something for you," Adam said, reaching into his pocket. "A wedding gift." He withdrew a small velvet pouch and placed it in Fiona's hand. Opening it, she found a delicate gold locket on a fine chain. When she pressed the tiny clasp, the locket opened to reveal a miniature photograph of Adam on one side and, to her surprise, a familiar landscape on the other. "That's the view from our new home," Adam explained. "I had Mr. Fletcher take the photograph last week and create the miniature. I thought, wherever you go, you'd have both me and home close to your heart." Tears welled in Fiona's eyes at the thoughtfulness of the gift. "It's perfect," she whispered, turning so he could fasten the chain around her neck. The locket nestled just below her throat, warm against her skin. "I have something for you too, though it can't compare to this." From the small beaded purse that matched her wedding dress, she withdrew a pocket watch. Not new, but obviously well cared for, its silver case engraved with intricate scrollwork. "It was my father's," she said as Adam accepted it with reverent hands. "The only thing of his I kept all these years. I had Mr. Johnson add this." She showed him how to open the back of the case, revealing a new inscription. "To my husband Adam, for all our moments, for all time. Fiona." Adam traced the words with his fingertip, clearly moved by the sentiment and the significance of her entrusting him with this family heirloom. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice rough with emotion. "I'll treasure it always." He slipped the watch into his waistcoat pocket, where it would remain close to his heart, just as her locket remained close to hers. Then he drew her into his arms, kissing her with a depth of feeling that required no words. When they finally broke apart, they remained close, foreheads touching, breathing in the moment and each other. "Mrs. Vance," Adam murmured, "I believe our guests might be able to continue this celebration without us. What do you say we slip away to our new home?" Fiona smiled, anticipation fluttering in her stomach at the thought of their first night as husband and wife. "I thought you'd never ask, Marshal Vance." Hand in hand, they made their discreet exit through the side door of the town hall, stopping only to collect Adam's horse from the livery stable. As they rode together through the quiet streets of Tanapa Junction toward their ranch, Fiona reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this moment. 8 months ago, she had boarded a stagecoach in Sacramento, a Boston spinster fleeing a stifling existence to claim a modest inheritance in a frontier town she'd never seen. She had imagined, at best, a quiet life of independence running her uncle's store. At worst, failure and an ignominious return east. Never had she imagined surviving an outlaw attack, falling in love with the marshal who saved her life, building a successful business, being kidnapped by revenge-seeking criminals, and now riding toward a future as bright and expansive as the Nevada sky above them. As the lights of Tanapa Junction receded behind them, and the silhouette of their new home appeared on the horizon, Fiona tightened her arms around Adam's waist and pressed her cheek against his back, filled with a profound sense of gratitude and joy. Whatever the future might hold, challenges, sorrows, joys, or triumphs, they would face it together. Their love forged in the crucible of danger and tested by fire, emerging stronger and more precious than either could have imagined on that fateful day when outlaws attacked and a cowboy marshal changed everything. 5 years later, the Vance Ranch flourished under the care of its devoted owners. What had begun as a modest homestead had expanded to include larger pastures for horses, a thriving vegetable garden, and a newly built wing on the main house to accommodate their growing family. Spring sunshine streamed through the kitchen windows as Fiona moved about preparing breakfast, her movements slightly encumbered by her advanced pregnancy. At the table, 3-year-old Thomas scribbled enthusiastically on a slate, practicing his letters with the serious concentration that reminded Fiona so much of his father. "Mama, look," he exclaimed, holding up the slate to display a wobbly but recognizable T. "I wrote my name." "That's wonderful, Tommy," Fiona praised, setting a plate of biscuits on the table. "You're becoming quite the scholar." The sound of the front door opening announced Adam's return from his morning chores. He entered the kitchen with a smile, bringing with him the scent of fresh air and horses. "Good morning, family," he greeted them, bending to kiss Fiona's cheek before ruffling Tommy's dark hair. "Papa." Tommy launched himself from his chair to be swept up into Adam's strong arms. "I wrote my name, and Uncle Tommy is coming today with candy, right?" Adam chuckled. "That's right, partner. Uncle Tommy's bringing supplies from the mercantile, and I suspect he might have some peppermint sticks hidden among them." Tommy Wilson, no longer a boy but a capable young man of 21, had become Fiona's full business partner 2 years earlier, when managing both the mercantile and her growing family had become too demanding. The arrangement benefited them. Both Tommy gained ownership in a thriving business, while Fiona maintained her connection to the store she had built without sacrificing time with her family. "How are you feeling this morning?" Adam asked Fiona quietly as he set Tommy back in his chair. "Like I'm carrying a future cavalry officer," she replied with a smile, placing a hand on her rounded belly where their second child was making his or her presence known with vigorous kicks. "Dr. Miller says any day now." Adam's eyes softened with concern and love. "Maybe you should rest more." Tommy and I can manage breakfast." Fiona laughed, shaking her head. "Adam Vance, after 5 years of marriage, you still haven't accepted that I'm perfectly capable of normal activities, even when expecting. I'm not an invalid." "Stubborn woman," he murmured affectionately, pulling her gently into his arms. "At least promise you'll sit while we eat." "That I can agree to," Fiona conceded, allowing him to help her into a chair. Despite her protests, she appreciated his concern. This pregnancy had been more tiring than her first, perhaps because she was now 37 to Adam's 42, no longer the young couple they had been when they married. As they enjoyed their breakfast together, Fiona marveled at how completely her life had transformed since that terrifying day when Reed Harkin's gang had attacked her stagecoach. The mercantile continued to thrive under Tommy Wilson's day-to-day management, with Fiona handling the accounts and major purchasing decisions. Adam had trained a deputy, young Frank Morgan, who now handled routine matters in town, allowing Adam more time with his family while still maintaining his role as marshal. Tanapa Junction itself had grown, with new businesses, a proper schoolhouse, and even a small hotel replacing the old rooming house. The railroad was rumored to be planning a spur line within the next few years, which would further transform the once remote settlement. Through all these changes, Adam and Fiona's partnership had only strengthened. They had weathered difficulties together, a drought that strained the region's economy, a brief but frightening period when Adam had been shot while apprehending a bank robber, the normal challenges of building a life and raising a child. Each challenge had only confirmed what they had learned during those early dangerous days. Together, they could face anything life presented. After breakfast, Adam departed for town to meet with the mayor about recent cattle rustling reports, promising to return with Tommy Wilson and the supplies before dinner. Fiona spent the morning teaching Tommy his numbers and reading him stories, then put him down for his afternoon nap. As she moved about the house, straightening and preparing for their guest, Fiona felt the first twinges that suggested her second child might be ready to make an appearance. Having experienced childbirth before, she recognized the early signs but knew there was likely plenty of time. Still, she sent the ranch hand, Jose, to fetch Mrs. Peterson from the neighboring farm, an experienced midwife who had attended many births in the area, including Tommy's. By the time Adam returned in the wagon with Tommy Wilson and the supplies, Fiona's labor had progressed enough that there was no hiding her condition. "The baby's coming," she announced calmly as Adam entered the house, his arms full of packages. "Mrs. Peterson is already here and everything's fine. Tommy's still napping." Adam's face registered a comical mixture of panic and excitement as he hastily set down his burden. "Now, but you seemed fine this morning. Should I ride for Dr. Miller?" "There's plenty of time," Fiona assured him, smiling at his concern. "First babies are usually the longest, remember. Mrs. Peterson says this one will likely come easier and faster, but not for several hours yet." Tommy Wilson stepped forward, his youthful face serious with responsibility. "I'll stay and help with young Tommy when he wakes," he offered. "Keep him occupied so he doesn't worry about his mother." "Thank you, Tommy," Adam said gratefully, clasping the young man's shoulder. "You're a good friend." As predicted, little Thomas was delighted to have his honorary uncle's undivided attention, especially when Tommy produced the promised peppermint sticks and a small wooden horse he had carved himself. The two disappeared into the boys' bedroom to play, leaving Adam to pace anxiously outside the bedroom where Fiona labored with Mrs. Peterson's calm assistance. Unlike Tommy's birth, which had been prolonged and difficult, their second child entered the world with surprising speed and relatively little drama. just as the sun began to set, casting long golden rays through the bedroom window. The first cries of a newborn filled the Vance home. "You have a daughter, Mr. Vance," Mrs. Peterson announced, opening the door to admit the anxious father. A beautiful, healthy girl with her mother's eyes. Adam entered the bedroom to find Fiona propped up against pillows, tired but radiant, cradling a small bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. She looked up as he approached, her smile luminous with joy and triumph. "Meet your daughter," she said softly, shifting the blanket to reveal a tiny face with a dusting of dark hair and eyes that, when they briefly opened, showed hints of Fiona's clear blue. Adam sat carefully on the edge of the bed, overcome with emotion as he gazed at his wife and newborn child. "She's perfect," he whispered, gently touching the baby's velvet cheek, "just like her mother." Fiona leaned against him, drawing strength from his steady presence. "What shall we name her?" "We never did settle on a girl's name." Adam considered for a moment, studying the tiny features that somehow combined the best of both of them. "What about a leaner?" he suggested quietly. "After my first wife, I think she would be pleased to know that life goes on, that love continues." Tears welled in Fiona's eyes at the sentiment behind his suggestion. Throughout their marriage, Adam had spoken openly of Alina, the young wife he had lost to typhoid during the war. Rather than a ghost that haunted their relationship, Alina's memory had been honored and integrated into the tapestry of their shared history. "Alina is beautiful," Fiona agreed. "Alina Sarah Vance, after Mrs. Miller too. She's been such a friend to us." "Perfect," Adam confirmed, carefully taking his daughter into his arms for the first time. "Welcome to the world, Alina Sarah Vance. You have quite a legacy to live up to." Little Tommy was brought in to meet his sister, approaching the baby with solemn curiosity that soon gave way to protective pride when Adam explained that, as a big brother, he would help take care of Alina as she grew. That evening, with Mrs. Peterson departed after ensuring mother and baby were settled, the Vance family gathered in the master bedroom. Tommy, having extracted a promise that he could show his sister how to ride when she was bigger, had finally succumbed to sleep in a chair beside the bed. Adam gently carried him to his own room before returning to Fiona and Alina. "I never imagined this life," Fiona said softly as Adam stretched out beside her on the bed, both of them watching their daughter sleep in the cradle Adam had crafted during the pregnancy. "When I left Boston, I thought I was simply seeking independence, a chance to make my own decisions after years under my aunt's control. And instead, you found danger, adventure, and a husband who worries too much," Adam teased gently, stroking her hair. "I found love," Fiona corrected him. "I found partnership and passion and purpose. I found you." She turned to look at him, her expression earnest. "Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been if Reed Harkins had chosen another day to attack a stagecoach, if you hadn't been tracking them at that exact time?" Adam considered her question, his blue eyes thoughtful in the lamplight. "I used to wonder about such things, especially during the war when so much seemed random, why one man died while another lived, why a bullet missed me by inches but killed the soldier beside me." He took her hand, running his thumb over the wedding ring he had placed there 5 years earlier. "Now I think perhaps there are patterns we can't always see, connections that draw certain souls together against all odds." "Like ours," Fiona murmured. "Like ours," he agreed. "Whether it was chance or fate that brought us together that day, I'm grateful for it every moment. You and our children are the greatest gifts of my life, Fiona." In the cradle, little Alina stirred and whimpered. Fiona moved to rise, but Adam gently pressed her back against the pillows. "Rest," he insisted. "Let me." He lifted his daughter with practiced ease, having learned with Tommy how to handle an infant despite his initial nervousness. Cradling Alina against his chest, he paced slowly around the room, humming a lullaby his mother had sung to him decades earlier. Watching her husband, still strong and handsome at 42, still the brave marshal who had saved her life, but now also the tender father who sang to his children, Fiona felt a wave of contentment so profound it brought tears to her eyes. Her journey from Boston socialite to frontier businesswoman and mother had been neither easy nor straightforward. There had been moments of terror, of doubt, of overwhelming challenge. But as she watched Adam with their daughter, illuminated by the soft glow of the bedside lamp, Fiona knew with absolute certainty that every step of that journey had led her precisely where she was meant to be. Outside their window, the vast Nevada sky stretched endless and star-filled above their ranch. Inside, the home they had built together sheltered their growing family. And in Fiona's heart, the love that had begun amid danger and saved her from despair continued to grow, as enduring as the mountains and as constant as the turning of the seasons. She had come to the West seeking independence and found something far more precious, a love that had changed everything, a family that gave her roots, and a future that stretched before them full of promise and possibility. As Alina drifted back to sleep in her father's arms and Adam returned their daughter to her cradle, Fiona reached for his hand, drawing him back to her side. In the quiet of their bedroom, with their children sleeping peacefully, and the night wrapping around their home like a protective cloak, Fiona and Adam shared a kiss that held all the tenderness, passion, and gratitude of their extraordinary journey together, a journey that had begun with danger and outlaws, but had led to this moment of perfect peace and abiding love.